you all. And I guess I'll go ahead and open up the meeting of the Management and Finance Policy Committee meeting. And with us will be committee members, Councilmember Gardner, and Councilmember Bergan. And with that, we will go to approval of March 26, 2026 minutes. Councilmember Gardner, Bergan, any additions, changes, substitutions?
I missed that meeting, so I would abstain.
Okay.
They look fine to me.
Okay, good to me. The minutes will be approved. Consent items. Nothing there. And then we'll go to our general business, which will be the February 2026 sales tax chart.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Richard Gargan's budget office. So sales tax collections for February 2026 totaled $22.3 million. So this was a decrease of roughly $1.6 million compared to February 2025 for a decrease of 6.6%. So with this, year-to-date collections are now 2.9% lower than at the same time a year ago. So collections from consistent taxpayers rose 2.6% compared to February 2025, but collections from variable sales taxpayers dropped nearly 60%. So this is the fourth consecutive month of significant year-over-year decreases among this group. And over these 4 months, variable sales tax collections are $3.3 million lower than at the same period a year ago. So at the sector level, it's pretty much a similar story. The eating and drinking places and clothing sectors are showing growth. They're up 6.4% and 10.2% year to date. But the electronics and industrial sales sectors, which are both heavily tied to variable sales taxpayer collections, are down significantly, about 32% and 82% respectively. So this is kind of an inverse of what we were seeing last year, where our variable sales taxpayers and collections were quite high, and they were driving a lot of that growth. We're kind of seeing all those variable collections dry out a bit. So I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. Councilmember Gardner, any questions?
No questions for me.
Councilmember Bergan?
Yeah, can he remind me what the variable category was from those taxes that were being paid?
So are you referring specifically to the sectors that have the majority of them, or?
Yes.
So the ones that are seeing the largest decreases are the industrial sales sector and the electronics computer sector.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. I meant, didn't you have people that were paying monthly instead of before they were paying quarterly, I think, or something?
Oh, yes, we did. So we made that full switch over by the 2025 calendar year.
Okay.
But so consistent. So our taxpayers that are remitting collections on a consistent monthly basis, their growth over the last 2 years has been 0.8% over the last 2 years. But variable sales tax collections were up about 85% last year. So were it not for that growth in variable sales tax collections, we would have seen decreases in overall sales tax.
Oh, gotcha.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
No further questions from myself. So thank you for that.
Great.
Report.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the 2026 Spring Supplemental Ordinance and Management and Finance.
Exciting times.
As always.
I'm Jackie Amon, Budget Program Manager in the Budget Office. And before I get going in my, my little overview, I just want to say, because I see some people in accounting here, and we wouldn't be here today with the data that we have if it weren't for some of the people working day and night and weekends in accounting in order to be able to hit this deadline. So I want to thank them and just say, Terry always said a new ERP, switching over to a new ERP was difficult, but I never really understood what she meant until now. So I just want to thank accounting for everything they did to make this happen. We need to thank them over and over, actually. But anyway, so here we are at spring supplemental time. This budget process covers 2 years with final adjustments to 2025 and initial adjustments to 2026. I'll give you a high-level overview of significant items in each year, and then department representatives and I can answer any specific questions you have, because as you can tell, there's lots of people here. For 2025, supplemental requests in the general fund total 19.5 million. Yes, that's a big number, but most significant supplemental requests in the general fund were projected, meaning they were included in the 2026 budget pro forma, and so they are in our financial plan. The budget office always likes to say there are no surprises in the supplemental requests, but for 2025, I need to say there is one of significance in the general fund. In public works facilities operations, unprecedented demand for repairs and maintenance, coupled with unexpected equipment rentals and staffing shortages requiring the use of more expensive contracted services, drove a $1.5 million overage that was not expected or included in the budget plan. So you'll see a supplemental in 2025 for that. For all the other funds in 2025, over half the items are technical and most of the others were projected or reviewed by council. A handful had not been previously reviewed, with one of significance in the Capital Projects Fund. The police drone first responder program was added for $1.8 million. This was not projected to be funded in 2025 at the time of the 2026 budget was created, and so it is a use of funds that was not in the CPF plan at that time. Moving on to 2026. Although there are a few requests in the general fund that have not previously been reviewed by council, they are not particularly significant monetarily, but I'll quickly list them here. A new police scheduling system for an additional $53,000. A police secondary employment program for $45,000. That's 100% offset by new revenue. Out of cycle pay increases in the amount of $44,000 for 5 employees in the public defender's office. The pay adjustments were approved by the Public Defender Commission and are in accordance with the city policies and the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. The Public Defender's Office is also requesting that the 3 vacant FTE that have been held in non-departmental since council put them there in the 2023 budget be transferred out of non-departmental to Public Defender's Office. To date, the Public Defender has been able to use the vacancy savings generated by these positions for contracted and variable hour staffing, but has not been able to fill them as FTE. The only other items I feel the need to point out are also for additional staffing in the water and wastewater funds. Aurora Water is requesting 6 FTE for a 5th construction and repair crew, totaling $1.4 million. This crew will help the group stay ahead of infrastructure needs by allowing for increased in-house line replacements and system improvements. This area has been in need of additional staff for some time. Water is also requesting 4 FTE at a total cost of $121,000. Some of these positions are currently held by a variable hour staffing, so the department was able to provide offsetting reductions to the variable hour pay budget to reduce the impact of adding a flow control technician, GIS technician, project manager, and water conservation specialist. As always, a detail on every single one of these and many more are in the packet, and many people are here to answer any question you may have.
Thank you for the presentation, Councilmember Bergan.
Yes, a few questions. Thank you for the presentation. The out of the police, you said that the new expenses were offset by new revenue. Was that due to all the revenue that's coming from the what's it called, the mobile van that's the speeding tickets?
That one, That one didn't rise to the level, that was in 2025, I believe, and it really didn't rise to the level of me calling it out. But the one in 2026 is new, and I'll let John Schneebeck talk about it if he wants to, but it's for a police employment program. So
Okay, because
John, do you wanna-
I heard the radar vans, one of the officers told me that for this year, at least year to date, that it has generated, I can't even remember what the amount was. It was really very, very high because obviously people are speeding. And so it was generating quite a bit of revenue, but I can't remember what the amount was.
I'll let John Schneebeck jump in here. I saw that he's here.
Yeah, so the photo radar program has gotten started. It has a $17,000 a month payment to the vendor for the processing, and then the revenues are coming back in. Right now, it is generating more revenue than it has costs of expenses going out the door. So that's probably what it is. I didn't pull the results to be able to tell you what those numbers are off the top, right now, but we can get that back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then
Sure.
I have a question on water. You said they've added 6 FTEs for line replacement. Is that the lead? Is that the lead line
I
or
don't-
the lead
they're-
pipes?
They're requesting to add them. I don't believe it's part of that, but Kat is here. Or is there someone you would rather have answer that question?
I'll answer the question, Jackie.
Okay.
Um, So no, they are not associated with the lead replacement program. We're actually doing those replacements through a contract. These are tied to primarily the emergency repairs or smaller scheduled replacements that we have within our system. So just a little bit of a reminder, the lead service line replacement program is replacing private service lines. So the construction and repair crew is focused on our public system. And we're doing all the private replacements through contract. We theoretically could do some of the private replacements in-house, but we just don't have anywhere even close to the staffing to do that right now. The construction and repair crews, we have people, for example, who are working 80-hour weeks, getting 40 hours of overtime. It's just a workload issue. We have employees who are hitting 500 hours of overtime a year to help with the emergency repairs and some scheduled replacements. So if we don't have emergency repairs, these crews are out there replacing the aged infrastructure in our own system. So they'll always be busy. And by adding the 5th crew will actually generate a lot of cost savings. It's just not a direct offset in the operating budget, since the emergency repairs and some of those and the scheduled repairs actually are both in the capital program. So we're paying for those through capital right now. This will shift the cost. It will lower the cost, but it will shift it over to operating.
Okay. Okay. And those emergency repairs, obviously you can't project how many you're going to have. So
can't.
you anticipate they'll continue to be at the same pace pretty much?
They've been increasing. So this crew was originally requested probably 2 or 3 years ago. And what we've done is tracked the workload. They had tracked it a little bit before that, but I asked them to track it additionally over the last few years, just to ensure we had a good handle on what the workload was. We also evaluated whether it would make sense to add this crew on a different shift. So right now we have our construction crews working during the day, and then we do emergency repairs during off hours. So that's where all the overtime is coming from.
Okay.
So we did a lot of analysis to see if it would make sense to add this crew to, for example, a swing shift and have them cover just the emergency repairs. But the way the data came back and the evaluation, this will be added as another day crew. They'll be additionally available to help with emergency responses after hours. But staff didn't feel we were quite to the point to add an off day shift crew quite yet.
Okay, thank you. I you know what I appreciate because I know your savings from the overtime, but what I really appreciate is that you did a workload analysis, which is what I requested for the 3 full-time additional council admins, and the majority of council said no to doing an analysis. But anyway, thank you, Marshall. And then my last question is on where will the 3 FTEs, will that show up in the fall because it's not on the spring supplemental for the council?
Oh, that will show up either in the fall or next spring. But
Okay.
we can do them. I think Jason's planning to do them sometime in the middle of the summer. And then we'll shore up the budget afterwards.
Okay, and then my last question is, what is the total amount of vacancies? Like the positions that are vacant, do we have an actual total amount of what that equals?
I do. I would have to look it up. Do you have any particular fund in mind or bottom line?
Bottom line,
City.
Especially non-departmental, I'm most interested in, but just in general, yes.
So non-departmental, we don't have FTE. We only have the 3 public. We put the
Oh.
3 public defenders there in order to set them aside per budget, per the
Okay.
council instruction.
I think I meant general, whatever that category is, but I just bottom line, if I could get a number of what that amount is in vacancy savings. And because I have a different opinion on adding FTEs and saying that it's not costing us when savings is saving us money.
Let me ask Greg Hayes, because he's on here. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to send something out after this meeting? Because it went from vacancies to vacancy savings, which is a much different thing.
Let me go gather the information and we'll send out a response to your question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because that is a good question. That's a great question. And we do track that, but I just want to make sure our data is up to date and I'm giving you the most current numbers, that sort of
No,
thing.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And then just, lastly, on the public defenders. So, we don't do domestic violence anymore. So the workload is actually decreasing. So why would we want to fill 3 vacant FTEs? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess that's a discussion for we're not going to fill them until it would be considered at the budget workshop, correct?
Well, Elizabeth is here, and she can answer that question if she wants to, but I'm sure we will be discussing this more as time goes on. This
Yeah,
year.
I'm fine. I don't need
Okay.
I just would like to look at that down the road.
Okay, and I want to make a correction of something that I said. The police photo enforcement program is in the 2026 data. In the supplemental, it's designated revenue, not general fund. And since council had already reviewed it and the revenue completely offsets the expenditure, I didn't bring it up.
Okay,
So
thank you, Jack.
All right, are there any other questions?
Councilmember Gardner?
Nope.
None for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 4C, renewal of the investment advisory contract, Insight Investments.
Yes, so for the past 16 years, the city has utilized an outside investment advisory firm to assist in the management of its investment portfolio. Due to a number of restructurings and acquisitions, the names of those firms has changed. First it was MBIA Asset Management, then it went to Cutwater. And Cutwater was acquired by the Bank of New York. It's now Insight Investments that we use as our advisor. But through all of those name changes, our portfolio manager has remained the same. That's Mary Donovan in Denver. And she has since been joined by a relationship manager. His name is Tierno Stila. So Insight's investment services are non-discretionary, meaning that all the trades have to be approved by the city before they are made. Our portfolio holdings comply with the city's investment policy, and the performance is evaluated based against a publicly publicly available index, and in our case, that's the Merrill Lynch Bank of America 1 to 3 year Treasury Index. Over the past 5 years, the city's portfolio has outperformed the index by 49 basis points, which is essentially half a percentage. One factor in the outperformance has been the city's investment in corporate securities. The city's comfort with these holdings comes large part from the fact that Insight has a 50-person bench who full-time evaluates credits, monitors the strength of the credits, and updates the city of any changes in their financial strength or ratings. We wouldn't have the staff to do that. That's why I said that gives us a lot of comfort, also gives us a lot more return. So in addition to providing investment recommendations, Insight provides clear, accurate, and comprehensive reports for city staff and committees. Insight's contract is up June 30th of this year, and they have proposed an extension of the contract. They gave us two options. One would be a 5-year extension and one a 10-year extension. The pricing offered in the proposal was compared to fees paid by other large Colorado municipalities, and we surveyed Arvada, Denver, Colorado Springs, and RTD. Both of the proposals, both for the 5-year and the 10-year, were attractive when compared to that survey group. Summary of the pricing is provided in the commentary for your information. We did calculate costs of each of those options, the 5-year and the 10-year, and determined that the 5-year extension was going to cost more than the 10-year extension over the first 5 years, $187,500. So the 10-year at the reduced price saves us $187,500 over that first 5-year period. So in light of the competitive fixed pricing, strong performance, credit analysis abilities, and high level of service provided by Insight, staff recommends renewing the contract for a 10-year term. And we would like to know whether or not the committee would support that 10-year contract extension with Insight Investment.
Thank you for presentation. Councilmember Gardner, any questions?
No questions. I mean, I support 10-year extension. Mary and her team have always done a good job, so I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bergan?
I'm also good with that and good with the recommendation to move forward.
I as well, so you've got us to move it forward.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you and your team for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next item is also mine, and this is information that was provided to council earlier, but we wanted to just remind you that we were recently, the city is rated by 3 different rating agencies. Those would be the city and Aurora Water. Those would be Moody's Investor Service, Fitch Ratings, and Standard & Poor's. Fitch Rating, as part of its annual surveillance, recently reviewed the city's financial profile, budget, and demographic and economic strength to arrive at our ratings. They did, and we have the report, they did reaffirm the city's AAA rating for issuer default rating and its AA+ rating on its certificates of participation. And I'll just remind you that certificates of participation, being appropriation credits, are always one notch below the issuer default rating because we have discretion on whether or not we appropriate those payments in the budget. So in its report, Fitch noted factors which could lead to a downgrade in the rating. Those include the continued drawdown of reserves. So we've drawn down some of our reserves in order to close budget gaps and weakened sales taxes. So they will have their eyes on that going forward, and that will factor into ratings going forward. But it was a positive report. They affirmed our strong ratings, and we wanted to let City Council know and this committee know that did happen, and we're very pleased. So that's the end of my report.
Great. Any questions of staff? If
None
not,
from me. Thank you.
all right,
Thank you.
continue the great work.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 4E, the Interfederal Government IGA with Arapahoe County for additional voter service polling center.
Yes, hi, Council, Katie Rodriguez, City Clerk. This is to update the existing IGA that we have with Arapahoe County to add Southeast Recreation Center as a VSPC location for the 2026 election. And then it will also designate Central Recreation Center and Talon's Reach Library as Phase 1 locations, which means they'll open a few days earlier than they typically do. And this is because they've been seeing a high turnout in the past elections at these locations.
Great. Thank you, Katie, for the presentation. Councilmember Bergan, any questions?
Just, what was the reasoning behind adding Southeast Recreation Center? Because Talon's Reach is pretty close to it.
They said that
10
they've had a lot of foot traffic at Talon's Reach lately and that they wanted to add another location next to it.
Oh, okay, it was getting crowded probably. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gardner?
No questions.
None for me as well. Thank you, Katie.
All right, thank you.
And we'll move on to the 2025 external audit, pre-audit letter for this.
Good afternoon. I'm Tyra Litsu. I'm the city controller. In the packet for today's meeting is a pre-audit letter from our external auditors, Forvis Mazars. This letter is one of 2 required communications from the auditors to those charged with governance, which for the city is the Management and Finance Committee. The other required communication will be provided at the completion of the audit. In the December 2025 MNF meeting, Nancy Wishmeyer did present the audit engagement letter. So this is separate from the engagement letter. The engagement letter did provide details about the scope and timing of the 2025 audit, services provided by our auditors, and really what the responsibilities of the auditors and then management at the city is in relation to the annual audit. This pre-audit letter provides more details of the overview and responsibilities of the annual audit, planned timing of the procedures, and the planned audit scope. Just some specific items that are detailed in this letter include as part of each audit, the auditors do identify areas where they have identified significant risks of material misstatement. Most of these areas are standard risks that occur in most governmental organizations. One additional risk for 2025 does relate to the implementation of Workday and some additional testing that they do have to do. They have their IT specialists that have done some testing over the system conversion. In addition to the specialists for the IT system conversion, the auditors do utilize specialists for the evaluation of the investments at the city. The auditors did provide information about other procedures that they will perform. And these procedures are closer to the end of the audit, where they do obtain legal representation from the city attorneys and outside legal counsel. And they also obtain representations from management at the conclusion of the audit. Finally, the auditors detail the procedures that will be done for their consideration of error or fraud. These procedures are standard audit procedures and they're done in each audit. At the conclusion of the audit, the final required communications letter will be provided to the committee. This letter will provide communication of any required internal control related matters and any significant matters that may arise from the audit. Are there any questions relating to this audit letter that I can provide some additional information for?
Thank you for the presentation. Councilmember Gardner?
No questions.
Councilmember Bergan?
Yes, I just have one on, I think it in the letter it mentioned, or in the backup, it mentioned grants as being part of the external audit.
Yes, so every year as part of the external audit, they do look at federal grants that the city does expend. They do a risk-based approach on those. And so they have conducted most of those federal audit testing. They're finalizing that testing right now.
So would that, do they audit our process or do they audit those that will receive the grants?
They audit our process, so our internal controls over how we spend the funds, internal controls and the compliance relating to those expenditures, and then other requirements that the federal government might have for those. So that their testing really focuses on the federal audits, the
Right.
federal expenditures. They also do procedures called the SCFD. We do receive funds from SCFD, so they do some additional audit procedures over those as well. So those are specific audit procedures that they do over those types of funds as well.
Okay, so in terms of grants that are given to nonprofits, I mean, we had ARPA dollars, obviously, a few years back where we were giving a lot of money out. Who oversees the nonprofits because I asked this question before and asked for an internal audit, and then I was told that we could not do financial audits on those. So who does that? If anybody.
So for those, it really focuses on what our procedures are to monitor those. And our procedures to monitor is generally looking at all the expenditure requests that come in. And looking at those types of things. Like specifically, I'd have to look into what audit specific procedures we do, but the external auditors will look at what our procedures over our subrecipients. So those would be considered subrecipients.
Okay.
So they do test those if it's considered a significant item of the
Well, they
audit.
should test because I requested information on Mosaic, and we gave them millions of dollars. And I asked even for receipts, and the receipts were ridiculous that were approved by us for, I mean, food at the food court and Target and little supplies and so forth. And it didn't even match up to the program. So I was really disappointed that we were not able to better monitor what monies were going out, and all the monies were allocated. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you. No questions from me as well. And we'll go to 4G, the internal audit Q1 2026 update.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Michelle Crawford, City Auditor, and today I'm going to go through a couple of items with everybody. We're going to start out with the first quarter updates or overall updates, and then overall audit updates, and then go into the results of 2 of our completed audits. For overall updates, we did our annual review of our internal audit charter and our strategic plan and did not identify any updates needed. Both of those were significantly updated last year. Additionally, we finalized our internal quality assessment and did not identify any significant issues. In progress for audits in the first quarter was police property evidence, life safety inspections. This was originally on the audit plan as residential development inspections. As we began our initial assessment, we identified we were not getting the cross-section of departments we were looking for. So we've adjusted this to look at the life safety inspections on multifamily housing involving code enforcement, building division, and then Aurora Fire Rescue inspections as well. The updated scope and objectives are included in our quarterly report. Additionally, we've started the Aurora water leak adjustments and account reviews, and we had begun some initial stages on a service provider review due to the staff resources being involved in the workday stuff that's going on additional to the external audit and some additional changes. We've chosen to pause that, and we'll reassess that later this year. We always track our progress against our audit plans. For 2025, we have that one remaining audit, and then for 2026, we are at 22% of audits started or completed. We also track the percentage of audit recommendations that are accepted for each audit, and for the 2 completed audits this quarter, we are at 100% acceptance of our audit recommendations. Additionally, we track outstanding recommendations by department starting each year. So teal indicates in progress, green indicates implicated, and those 2 green on police were actually related to their body-worn camera policy, which was updated and published yesterday. So those are now completed, which is indicated by the orange, which means they are closed out. Additionally, we have one older outstanding audit relating to continuity operation plans. In order for those audit recommendations to be implemented, departments need to complete their initial training and their initial COOP plans. So we started tracking last year or the year before completion. And so green indicates the departments that have completed those initial steps. Yellow are those that are partially completed. And then the dark orange are those that are currently behind schedule. And with that, I'm going to pause before I go into our first audit results to see if there's any questions specifically to that quarterly update.
Thank you for that presentation, Councilmember Bergan.
No questions, but Michelle, did they ever hire you to do those disclaimers on radio commercials? Because you
No.
talk really fast.
I do speak fast. Perfect. Okay, we can go. Okay, we can go into the next then, which is the results of our first completed audit in this quarter, which is on facilities project delivery. So the audit scope for this was capital project activities at the time of our audit procedures in 2025, and this audit was conducted in accordance with our audit standards. The objectives for this one included if vendor payment process was executed accurately and timely according to contract policies, procedures, and practices. If the executed change orders were properly justified and approved and the terms were consistent with the original contract, and whether project management processes followed according to practice. What we found is based on our procedures for reviewed projects, most vendor payments were made in accordance with the contract, but did not always follow city practices. Reviewed change order terms were generally justified and consistent with contract terms, but did not always include the required approvals, and project management practices themselves were inconsistent across the division. Some initial background, FPD is within Public Works and focuses on a variety of areas. We reviewed 14 projects as part of this audit, totaling $59 million, majority of which was related to the animal shelters project. And the project types we looked at included emergency, standard, and then estimates. There's a need to standardize project processes and deliverables. It was difficult to determine which deliverables were appropriate for each project. For example, some had estimates that were one page and others were multiple pages with drawings. Staff have difficulty in determining what is sufficient or expected for deliverables. A good example of a standardized deliverable is the newly adopted project intake form. Additionally, a lack of standardized processes is impacting how staff are managing projects from start to finish. The lack of standardization has resulted in frustration that has permeated this division. Standardized processes and deliverables increase efficiencies, it reduces errors, and it decreases rework. We recommend standardizing processes, ensuring staff have a consistent method for completing project delivery phases, and standardizing deliverables, ensuring a consistent approach to project completion, including across project types and developing expectations and standards to help with staff performance. Overall, policies are outdated, do not reflect current practices, and require revisions. There are 2 citywide BPMs that are related to these areas, and they're dated from the 90s. Policies are that high-level guidance that's setting direction and guiding and influencing decision-making. We recommend working with city management, other departments as needed to update those citywide policies, incorporating leading practices, and then developing any new policies outside of BPMs and sharing those with applicable departments, and ensuring staff are trained on any new or updated policies. The division also lacks a comprehensive project delivery guide and procedures outlining duties and responsibilities of staff. While some documents did exist, they're not organized and they are piecemeal. The lack of procedures is hindering employees' work. Procedures are the how-to, the step-by-step of the work. We recommend creating a project delivery guide and updating any guidance that to make sure it reflects current practices and finalizing any drafts for division and potential citywide use. Contract and agreement language do not always align with the project type and invoice support requirements. Staff's perception is that some payment delays on these projects were caused by inaccurate contract language and supervisors not approving until hours worked were provided, which was not required by a contract. For example, invoices for lump sum contracts were supported by details that were more appropriate for a time and materials contract. The city has engaged a consultant to review some of this contract language to ensure it's appropriate. We recommend improving review and oversight of contract and agreement language prior to final signatures, ensuring it's appropriate for each project, and developing and implementing any recommendations received from the consultant around language updates for contracts. Project deliverables were stored in multiple locations, which was ineffective and inefficient and impacted our ability to easily locate support. Project Mate's project management system was adopted in 2024. Utilizing the system allows for better data and better management of performance measures. We recommend identifying ways to fully utilize the system, including collaborating with pros and other departments who are already utilizing the system to identify opportunities for its use. We also recommend developing procedures for deliverables where they're undergoing multiple versions and edits. And then sufficient appropriate invoice support was not always provided, and pay authorizations for invoices were missing or had missing signatures. We recommend ensuring sufficient documentation is obtained and reviewed before approval, and making sure that documentation and support receives proper and completed signatures prior to execution. And with that, I'm going to pause here before I go into the next audit and see if there are any questions on this engagement.
Thank you for that presentation. Councilmember Bergan,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yeah, so Michelle, having been on this committee now for 6 years, one of the recurring themes I see when we have findings seems to be departments all kind of doing their own thing, I guess I'll say, when it comes to purchasing, when it comes to, contracts, on and on. And so I'm just curious, are there best practices we can implement to address that? Is it just a function of being a large, complex city? Do we need to look more at centralized procurement? Like all of those kinds of questions are kind of what swirl around in my head. I think about, going back last year, the Public Works Department had Home Depot cards they were using. Obviously we remember all the stuff courts went through and with, petty cash and vending machine. I mean, there just seems to be a lot of that, and by themselves, they're not huge material dollar amounts. But I guess I just more wonder, like, is there a kind of a structural change or a structural mindset that we need to adopt at the city to avoid kind of, it just seems like there's a lot of one-offs when it comes to purchasing and procurement and that type of thing.
Yeah, so I'd say we're definitely a lot of silos at the city. And there's definitely, I think, areas and opportunities for improvement and more collaboration, specifically around small dollars. I think a lot of what we're seeing lately is a lot of the small dollar purchases is where we're seeing some of these issues and concerns. But I think there are definitely opportunities for collaboration, and that's one of the recommendations was to work with some of the other groups already using one of the systems. They're at least using the same system, but to kind of leverage those resources. And our understanding is the departments are starting to have some of those conversations and those cross-departmental discussions on those areas. So I would kind of say it's kind of, there's always going to be some opportunities. My hope is we continue to improve and strive and kind of break down some of those silos and work together a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, my kind of a little bit piggyback on what Councilmember Gardner was saying is, like, how many people or departments do these go through to get authorization? That's I'm wondering if it's just a matter of, like I say, if everybody's siloed and they're kind of sitting on it and waiting for somebody else's signature, is there a better way to streamline that process?
So I think using the Project Mate system to manage these construction projects, I think part of that system is helping. And so some of these within the work groups themselves, they're able to kind of streamline that now. And I know they're having discussions of how when it breaks out of the departments for approvals and stuff of how to maybe streamline that within the system. And so I think Laura's on, but my understanding is they're looking at ways to kind of help break down some of that and kind of utilize these systems and leverage them more in order to get that more kind of streamlined workflows and everything and to make it more efficient.
Thank you. And we'll
Actually-
move on.
oh, actually, can I-
go ahead.
Yeah, just a question, Michelle. When you mentioned the Project Mate system,
Right.
And you said that was fairly new, I think. Is it easy to use, or is it? I was just wondering if that's part of the problem, that if it's cumbersome.
We identified that of the city departments using it, I would say this group probably maybe had the least training. And that's where we're recommending working with some of the other departments that have really been in there and are fully utilizing it to kind of gain their knowledge. And then potentially, if needed, have additional training. So we've had some of those discussions as well. If we didn't quite get it set up correctly, if we need some more training. But fortunately, we have some other work groups in the city that are heavy utilizers of it that I think have that knowledge that can share, which is why we recommended coordinating with them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll go to the next audit then. One more to go. All right, review of Fox Theater expenses. The audit scope for this was June 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. And this audit was also conducted in accordance with our audit standards. The audit objective was to determine if expenses complied with city policies, including adequate support, segregation of duties, and confirmation of work performed. We concluded that expenses did not comply with city policies, and we could not determine whether or not some expenses were legitimate. Some additional background, this was in addition to our 2026 audit plan after we received concerns relating to expenses. We did perform a high-level review of all expenses paid through accounts payable during our audit scope. The audit identified two significant concerns where we could not determine whether or not fraud occurred. The first was an LLC created by a former employee's spouse where the former employee approved payments to them. The lack of detail in the invoices, we could not determine legitimacy. The second was two employees were paid through a third party for work out at the Fox outside of city payroll. Invoices were altered to conceal names, and there was no support provided with the financial records for hours worked. We did recommend the city file a police report, which the city did on February 25th, 2026, and we did receive an update from the police department this week that they have completed their investigation and they're not pursuing criminal charges. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So as noted, a former employee, if you go back one more, a former employee approved payments totaling $3,150 to an LLC registered to their spouse at their personal residence. Documentation, we do have documentation the former employee did intentionally create this LLC to circumvent city procedures. The invoice details were insufficient. There were no written agreements, no hourly rates or hours documented to support the charges. In addition to filing the police report, we also recommended that City Finance develops procedures to compare employee and vendor addresses to identify any potential issues for review. This is a way that this could have been detected. Employees are being paid outside of payroll, so the Fox uses a third-party vendor for equity payments for individuals, unionized individuals working on productions, including stage management. The Fox provides that information and hours worked to the third party. The third party then bills the city then pays the third party, and then that third party pays these individuals via W-2 or a 1099. Invoices from this vendor were altered, incomplete, or missing. 16 invoices were altered to conceal employees' names. 24 invoices were not provided through the financial process, 11 of which included employees' names. 2 employees were listed on invoices, and we could not determine who altered or withheld support. In addition, relating to employee payments, we could not determine if these employees outworked the 40 hours in their normal city role and then billed for additional time due to a lack of financial records and timekeeping. Additionally, employee A was aware that payments through city payroll were not being permitted for stage management. Employee A was an exempt employee, and per city policy, the city is not required to pay overtime or comp time for work over 40 hours. Any payments outside of 40 hours may be out of compliance with city policies. Employee B is a non-exempt employee, and there are Fair Labor Standards Act requirements that kick in for time and a half for work over 40 hours. Any payments outside of 40 hours may be out of compliance with both FLSA and city policies. We recommended working with HR to determine whether or not there are any FLSA or city policy violations and to address those following city policy, to cease the practice of allowing employees to be paid outside of city payroll, and additional training for financial staff on reviewing these third-party invoices and developing procedures on the elements that are needed to be reviewed on these. The Employee Handbook, Section 1-8 on ethics states, no employee should have any direct or indirect interest, financial or otherwise, engage in any business transaction or professional activity that is in conflict with the proper discharge of their duties in the public interest. As previously identified, a former employee approved payments to their spouse's LLC totaling $3,150. In addition, they also approved payments to a second vendor where their spouse was subcontracted to perform work at the Fox. They approved an additional $3,500 to this other vendor. An additional $2,000 was paid to that vendor, but there was no documented approval. Invoices from that third-party payroll vendor were addressed to employee A, who was also a payee on those invoices. And we had no documentation that anyone other than employee A was the recipient of those invoices for review. We recommend, again, coordinating with Human Resources to determine if any actions are necessary to address conflict of interest violations. And we're also recommending ethics training for all Fox employees, focusing on conflicts of interest and related party transactions. There is no documentation that Human Resources and the City Attorney's Office approved the use of independent contractors in accordance with city policies. And one example we found is one individual was paid hourly and earned over $32,000 in 2025. Misclassifying employees as independent contractors can deny them minimum wage and overtime, with the potential for violations of federal and state laws. Additionally, the Fox advertises for and uses interns without coordinating with HR, and some of those were paid outside of city payroll. FLSA also includes rules regarding wages and overtime for interns. We recommend Fox comply with city policies for independent contractors and develops guidance and procedures to collaborate with HR and the city attorney's office for the use of those independent contractors and required approvals, and also developing guidance and procedures to collaborate with HR for interns, including any payments going through city payroll. Overall, expenses are not adequately reviewed. Of 96 additional expenses we reviewed, 72% had insufficient detail. We identified overpayments and underpayments, possible duplicate payments, approvals prior to hourly work being performed. We had concerns with changes being made to written agreements, missing support from agreements, and then differing amounts on the agreements themselves. We recommend staff responsible for reviewing those invoices receive additional training on their responsibilities to ensure all invoices are adequately supported and comply with city policies. Procedures did not exist for managing individuals and vendors providing services. We saw inconsistencies on when written agreements were used. We observed different rates for similar services. There are no procedures for hiring individuals to provide services or for ongoing work. And we did see individuals who had worked on productions later being hired for other services, which created an appearance of favoritism. We recommend developing vendor management procedures, including rate comparisons for regular services, requirements for written agreements, and a process for transparently selecting individuals and vendors. The city overall needs to improve its oversight of Fox Theater expenses. We noted we've identified significant concerns relating to expenses. Additionally, the Fox used a budget tracking spreadsheet to track production-related costs. However, at the time of the audit, it had not been updated in over 4 months, and they did overspend their 2025 budget. Additionally, some of the expenses we couldn't determine the legitimacy of were from restricted funds, which do carry a higher level of scrutiny with them. We recommend improving financial oversight by requiring all Fox expenses to be reviewed and approved by a member of LCS financial staff, timely tracking of production-related expenses, including comparisons to the budget regularly, and then working with city finance to determine if use of any restricted funds was non-compliant. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Councilmember Bergan.
Well, first of all, very concerning that we had these issues, and I'm thankful that your audit has brought forth recommendations, and happy to see that the city is going to be implementing those. I do have a question though on the police finding that they were not pursuing criminal charges. What is the threshold for that? Because it did seem, there was legitimacy of funds that was questioned, duplicate payments, the LLC. So I was just wondering what determines what becomes, criminal.
So I'd have to defer to the police department on that specifically. I will say I know the detective did a pretty thorough investigation, including interviews. And I believe based off of our discussion with him, they deemed that there was not enough to pursue a criminal charges. I know these types of cases when there's not a lot of documentation are a little bit more challenging. And so I would say the police department would probably have to give you a more formal explanation. Other than I think it's definitely poor practices, but I think that they didn't find enough to be able to take it to the district attorney.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Yep.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yeah, thanks. A couple things. I guess first, just harken back to my comment from earlier about, silos and whatever, and we don't need to rehash that. We talked about that. A couple of questions on, so one of the comments you made, Michelle, and I don't know if anybody on can answer this, but something to the effect of folks were hired for stage management and then later for other positions, implying favoritism. And yeah, it could imply that, but it could also, is that just kind of standard industry practice? I guess where I'm going with that is if we're going to operate a theater, which I think we should, then, you know, we have to be realistic about the, I guess, infrastructure in which theaters exist and how that world works, and, you know, and tailor our oversight to that. So I don't know if anybody's on that can answer that question.
I can answer part of it. So part of the concern was we had individuals working on productions that were then hired for like kind of smaller services, right? Maybe front desk, maybe those types of things. And what we saw in the documentation was and it kind of goes back to the range, the dollar amount of services. There was kind of a wide range in what we were paying people in these different positions, where we recognize some of these names. So part of what we're looking for is, did we just call our friend and say, hey, I've got this position, come work at it? Or is there like that more transparent of, which they do for actors and other things, they post and say, hey, we know we're going to need actors, we know we're going to need run crew, and kind of more transparently posting or having a list, kind of ongoing list of people that provide those services in a little bit more transparent, open manner. My understanding is in this kind of group, it is a lot of kind of who you know potentially happening. We just want to make sure that we're being very open and transparent to kind of reduce that appearance where we can, and where we know that we're going to use those similar services throughout the year.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think we all can acknowledge hiring anywhere in life is a lot based on who you know. So yeah, I appreciate that answer. And then my other question, excuse me, is around the use of the third-party payroll services. I thought some of that was related to like Actors Guild, Actors Union payments and things. So if a recommendation is put into place to not allow that, is the city going to be able to manage that, or what does that look like?
The recommendation is for city employees not
Okay.
to be part of that.
Okay.
You were still gonna, yeah,
actors.
correct.
Okay.
We don't want city employees to be paid outside of city payroll, and part of that goes into those FLSA and other considerations because they're getting paid two ways. So the recommendation is to cease the practice of allowing employees to be paid through that outside of city payroll at all. They'll still have to continue for any unionized individuals to use that through that vendor, just not city employees.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that extensive audit and recommendations, and sad to hear that's happened, but you know, that we caught it and, you know, make the adjustments and move forward. So thank you again for all you guys done. Appreciate it.
Thank
you. And with that, I think we're at the end. Any miscellaneous matters for consideration?
Just want to verify the meeting coming up next month, May 28th at 1:45 p.m.
Still good? Councilmember Bergan's good. Councilmember Gardner, you good?
Yeah.
All right, we're all good then.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, nothing else. We'll adjourn. Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye all.